He called me. Apologize. You did? Yeah. But
You didn't put a chairman on this.
we know he knows that. I don't know his point.
Okay.
And it's not.
Okay, because
We have
there's-
one more plus two alternates too. Of course, we'll do that next week.
Okay, because there was one that we've already talked to and her name is not here.
Very good.
Now, of course,
Very
we
good.
go from around.
So,
Can't,
so her,
You know,
I
and
did.
she's very interested.
Yeah.
So we reached out to the station.
That's good.
Just to send a follow-up email.
Yes, good.
So thankful.
Good.
Appreciative.
That- Yes, that's good. Good, good.
If that's.
And we talked to her before
Good, good, good.
Yeah.
when this first came up, so she was excited. Okay.
You better not wish.
Okay, that's
You
good.
know, that
Does Ryan Messing live? Does he live around
is,
here?
no,
Usually with them.
Does,
I believe he does.
okay, good. I like Ryan.
Top notch.
Yeah, he is.
Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Call the March 16th meeting of the Woodfin Town Board of Commissioners to order. First item be the invocation. Mr. Honeycutt, would you do that, please?
And Father, we thank you once again for your blessings, for that you continue to go with the board, make the right decisions, continue to bless and be with the town and the employees, protect and help us to serve you. We ask in your name, amen.
Okay, in accordance with the code of ethics adopted by the board, all town commissioners have a duty to obey all applicable laws regarding official actions, to uphold the integrity and independence of the office, to avoid impropriety in the exercise of official duties, to faithfully perform the duties of the office, and to conduct the affairs of the governing board in an open and public manner. Is there any item on the agenda, the outcome of which will have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact for any board member? Also, does any board member have a financial interest in any public contract coming before the board today? There being none, all board members have a duty and obligation to vote. Next item is approval of the agenda, and I have removed item number 3 under new business, consideration of naming rights policy for Woodfin Greenway and Blue. With that deletion, to have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? In favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the next item is approval of the February 16, 2021 regular meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the next item is a public forum where the public's invited to view this meeting of the town board via Zoom. All documents relating to agenda items not published on the website may be viewed in advance of the meetings in person at Town Hall, 90 Up Mountain Road, Woodfin. Next item, public comment. Do we have any public comments? They will be written. Okay, Michael, you reading the comments?
Do we have a time limit or anything on?
It's 15-minute is the time limit that the mayor had set. We may take exception to that too, but.
All right, that's what I was just asking. I didn't know if I was reading everything or if we're gonna do a 15-minute timer. All right, sounds good. All right, first comment is from a Robert McGee. On March 1st, I attended the Town of Woodfin Zoom hearing regarding the conditional use permit. The Bluffs developer is seeking to move forward with nearly 1,400 high-rise apartment units in the forest spanning 90 acres from Richmond Hill Park to our beloved French Broad River. I'm not an attorney, but I have to say that I was struck by how often the Bluffs legal counsel stated, and I'm paraphrasing, that the traffic on Richmond Hill Drive is going to be what it's going to be no matter the height of the buildings. This statement seemed reckless to me. If that view is shared by elected officials of Woodfin, I believe they are being negligent in their duty to local citizens. Seems sort of like a leader who understands that people are dying during a pandemic, does nothing to help, and then shrugs and says it is what it is. Richmond Hill Drive is heavily traveled. Large trucks jackknife with regularity at the intersection of Pearson Bridge Road and Richmond Hill Drive. There have been at least eight incidents in the first 2 weeks of March that we know of, and we have pictures to prove it. Visitors to our beloved park, the Western North Carolina Rest Home, as well as crucial National Guard personnel rely on this lone access point. If our local leaders choose to do nothing to ensure that the Bluffs developer commits to building his bridge before starting construction on one of the largest ever developments in our area and one that is facing much public opposition, then we have serious concerns for our health and public safety. Imagine a narrow residential lane jammed by a stalled vehicle at the same moment of a large fire. It won't matter how much water is available at the Bluffs if the firefighters can't reach what many are now calling the death trap. Allowing the Bluffs to proceed without ensuring that there is a main entrance from roadside, as the developer has publicly stated he wants, is playing with fire. Please make sure that the bridge is in place before approving any permits or allowing any part of the project to move forward. Next is from Marilya Trevisani. Greetings, I am writing to express my position of the opposed development currently titled the Bluffs of Riverbend. Last January was 10 years that I've been living in Woodfin. While here, I've had many different housing situations. When I moved here initially, I lived with multiple roommates and had no job. Not long after, I stayed in affordable apartments and did a lot of odd jobs like a lot of young people in this area. And now I'm privileged to call myself both a nurse and homeowner. Woodfin has felt like home almost since the beginning. I love this town. The developers from Florida wanting to build here do not love Woodfin. It isn't that they wish us harm necessarily. They don't really wish us anything. They wish for money for themselves. They have no investment in the town planning. They won't be hanging around. They just build. They go from city to city looking for pretty land, and they petition the local board of adjustment, throw money at them, and then someone with a folksy and relatable accent makes the pitch. They use words we like sustainability and our vision. The developers will not stop petitioning either. If watching what came of the Crossroads development south of Asheville has taught us, 1545 was never their final number for apartments. It was what they would have tried to get away with initially. They will continue to whittle the numbers back by a few hundred and keep resubmitting until one of you says, you know what, guys, this seems reasonable. Because this is what they do and why they keep their lawyers. They take advantage of this form of petitioning in which the citizens of the town have no voice, save that of a lawyer. They must pay to speak for them, and sooner or later, the citizens of the city of Woodfin will be too broke or tired or sick or stressed or distracted to oppose the development. This is where you guys, the city of Asheville, together with the city of Woodfin, come in. You can stop this once and for all. You can be the decisive voices that determine what this town will look like. I'm not blind. Woodfin is growing. We need housing that everyday people who go to their nursing and firefighter and teacher jobs can afford. I share a street with social workers, school teachers, and college students. Sorry, I lost my place. I learned shortly after writing this that their landlord, as his right, has given them until April to move out to make way for high-paying tenants. For my part, I appreciate having had the opportunity to experience a wide range of upward economic mobility within this town. I now make a good living wage as an RN at Advent Health and promise you couldn't afford one of their apartments, even with their vision of what affordable housing there would look like there. Moreover, we need this town to be ours. We need trails and green spaces and nature, places you can go to be outside without spending money. These guys coming from Florida to build an entire private luxury city that is inaccessible to everyday Woodfin citizens sets a precedent that is hard to come down from. And finally, this development negatively impacts the projects Woodfin has planned that feature use of the river and the surrounding area. This development would kill and displace the wildlife already living in those woods and increase the amount of runoff into the river. We need those who are emotionally invested in this town to be the ones to plan it and determine the direction in which it's going. As a citizen of Woodfin, I would like for this to be a town that everyone can enjoy, not just the wealthy. So I urge you, City of Asheville, to join us and say no to the bluffs. Next is from a Ben Steer. Dear members of the Woodfin Board of Commissioners, I hope this finds you all well, and I thank you for taking a moment to consider my concerns about the proposed Bluffs at Riverbend development. I'm writing to you not only as a homeowner who will be affected by this development, but as an archaeologist who has carefully studied the history of land use in this region. It is my opinion that the developer of the Bluffs is seriously underestimating how difficult and expensive it will be to build on this property. If it made sense to build on that track, it probably would have been developed along with the rest of this area in the 60s. Why has that land remained undeveloped all this time? Maybe because it is an unwise place to build. Let's begin with the issue of winding mountain roads. It is not realistic or safe to use Richmond Hill Drive as a construction entrance for this project. Large trucks regularly get stuck at the base of Richmond Hill Drive. Emergency vehicles, including fire trucks, use Richmond Hill Drive to respond to medical emergencies at the West North Carolina Baptist Home. For practical safety reasons, the developer must begin permitting for a new bridge before this project moves forward. Now let's talk about water and dirt. For all the talk of building up, not out, and Texas donuts, I've heard very few details about the stabilization efforts that will be required to safely build these apartments, how stormwater will be managed during and after construction. If this development goes forward without a proper stormwater study, there is serious potential for major erosion and sediment runoff into the French Quarter River. This is exactly what happened when a new parking lot was constructed at Richmond Hill Park in 2006, and the use of an inadequate sediment control system led to runoff into the streams in the park. In that case, the city of Asheville was fined $50,000 by the DENR and had to scale back their plans to build baseball fields on the site. It is not hard to imagine something similar happening with the Bluffs. To put it plainly, the current Bluffs proposal lays out a best case scenario while downplaying the risks for the town of Woodfin. I urge the town of Woodfin to require the developer to commit to the construction of a bridge and a stormwater management plan that will protect the French Broad River before the project moves forward. If this development must go forward, it should be done responsibly. Better yet, I would encourage you to reconsider this project entirely, consider other better uses for that property, such as lower density housing or recreational use, such as a park and trail system. In the long run, more reasonable and responsible projects like those may be more profitable for the town of Woodfin. That property has remained undeveloped for decades and can wait a little longer for the right fit. Next is from McCall Coon. I have three ethics concerns regarding the proposed Bluffs at Richmond Hill. When the land was rezoned, the value of the property jumped. Peterson has acknowledged that under this zoning, the property would be worth about $4 million. But GIS reports that it is still assessed at about $509,000. We have reason to believe that both Peterson and his contact on Woodfin Council, who approved the rezoning, knew the change would have this impact. Should this property sell for Mountain Village development, back taxes are due the whole way back to the date of the rezoning. Should the property sell under its previous zoning, the back taxes would not be due. We are concerned about the ethics implications that an associate of Peterson on Woodfin Council knew that rezoning would be financially beneficial to his associate before he approved the change. Before proceeding, Woodfin should review the possible ethics violation, then act accordingly. The developer Holdsworth has used bankruptcy protection 1 to 3 times in the past. Bankruptcy protection stinks the local community with the remaining bills. Woodfin needs to ensure that the developer builds the bridge and related infrastructure up front so as to avoid any risk that the developer could stick Woodfin taxpayers to cover those expenses. Woodfin opens deliberations with a reminder of ethics requirements. I add these concerns to the ethics requirements. Next is from a Ralph Agewood. Dear Woodfin Commission, we wish to express our concern about the lack of planning for the Bluffs development. There was a mention of a bridge at the start, but this has since gone away. This will not work without a bridge. The builder needs to start applying for all the permits and studies now, as our one tiny road will not support 5 years of beatings. Pearson Bridge Road is an NCDOT road, and it will also not be able to handle 5 years of constant abuse. Woodfin will have to deal with them as well. Stormwater mitigation is also a big concern, as we have had some expert study about it in 2006. Asheville City told the residents of Richmond Hill that they had it all covered in a study. Then it rained during grading for ball fields, and the city had to halt the project. In addition, they had to pay $50,000 runoff remediation. We do not want to see a repeat of that kind of expert planning. We'd expect Richmond Hill Drive to be closed for use on the project except for emergency traffic. There needs to be more of a buffer between the current housing and new buildings. Next is from a Nancy Allen. I'm writing to object the proposed the Bluffs development. I'm a former resident of Woodfin and always loved the atmosphere of the area. Its closeness to downtown Asheville, but also providing a feeling of community with neighbors. I was dismayed to see the gated community built at Reynolds Mountain. That dates me, I guess. And even more dismayed, appalled, and disbelieved that the town of Woodfin would even consider such a development as described for the Bluffs. I believe the ambiance of the Asheville area is the reason people want to visit or live here. I also believe that building on such a large scale in a mountainous location is a detriment to that very ambience. You're talking about destroying forests, clogging traffic on small mountain roads, putting unbelievable stress on the current structures. I wonder how the commissioners can possibly justify granting a permit to someone who does not and never has lived in the area, who obviously has no concept of what Asheville is all about, and who apparently does not care what effect this project will have on the city. The very things that people value about Asheville will be destroyed by this ill-conceived project. Please reject the proposal, as it goes against everything that Woodfin and Asheville represent. Next from a Mike Brown. I am writing again to document my opposition to the Bluffs on River Bend development. It is too large for existing infrastructure. Irreparably harms the view shed and water quality Woodfin has been promoting to local businesses and tourism, and negatively affects current Woodfin residents by potentially raising overall appraisals to create unaffordable property taxes for long-term owners. At a minimum, the town should enforce the Mountain Village zoning changes to whatever plans are submitted and require bridge permitting before construction begins. I also object to the limitations placed on public comment. Limiting citizen participation in government is un-American and implies that town commissioners don't want constitute input. Next is from Christine Lunsford. Dear council members, I am writing to you as a fifth-generation local, having grown up and still live very near the proposed Bluffs development. Our family has been on the same property for nearly 100 years. However, the property is adjacent to the current Richmond Hill Park. People have been coming here in droves for years. All of the wonderful things that attract folks to our beautiful area are being destroyed. One out-of-state developer at a time. The beautiful land of the sky, where the mountains meet the heavens, is quickly becoming the land of the urban landscape, where the condos and apartments are now greeting our beautiful Carolina blue sky. The only people benefiting from destroying every piece of open property are the developer and the landowner. And inevitably, the burden of upkeep for roads and infrastructure will fall on the taxpayer. I just don't know why everything that makes our area so beautiful has to be destroyed. The wildlife are being displaced, trees that the birds and squirrels live in will be gone. When does it stop? Does it stop when finally there is not one tree left to cut down or not one piece of ground left to dig into? Please consider all the factors that are being presented to you from everyone. Please do not allow this development to take place. Please preserve the land before we have no land left to preserve. Linda Crevaro. Thank you for taking time to hear my concerns and comments about the proposed development, the Bluffs at River Bend. I am a homeowner that will be negatively impacted if the development goes forward at this time. I am also a nature lover, having moved to this area 18 years ago because of the beauty of the mountains and rivers. These are my specific concerns. A stabilization plan to address stormwater runoff has not been formally completed. The developer commented at the Woodfin zoning and planning meeting that he had walked all over that piece of land over 2 days. This does not translate as an environmental impact study. In order to protect the French Broad River, expert analysis needs to be completed and presented to elected officials and the citizens of Woodfin and Asheville. The only access to the proposed development at this time is through the city of Asheville via Richmond Hill Drive. This is unsafe for the residents of this area. We have a skilled nursing facility and several group residents that routinely require the access of emergency vehicles. Only several days ago, a neighbor required emergency personnel from the fire department and EMS. The routine traffic and parking can make this access difficult. Adding several years of construction vehicle traffic and then addition of thousands of private vehicles if the new development is complete creates a public health safety concern for current residents and the possible new residents of the proposed development. For these reasons, no construction must be permitted until the proper permitting for the proposed bridge to access the area is obtained and construction started. Once the bridge is complete, there must be an agreement that the access to the property via Richmond Hill Drive is closed except for emergency use. Amanda DeWeese. I'm writing in advance of tonight's meeting to once again express my concerns about the proposed Bluffs development and the Richmond Hill neighborhood. I previously wrote to you regarding the exponential increase in traffic that this development would bring to the already strained area, streets along with the fact that the taxpayers of Asheville stand to bear the financial burden of road repair and inevitable expansion while receiving none of the financial benefits enjoyed by Woodfin and the developer. Recent traffic incidents on Richmond Hill Drive perfectly illustrate the reality of my concerns. Since March 1st, 4 tractor trailers have become stuck at the intersection of Pearson Bridge Road and Richmond Hill Drive. In addition, there has been one additional incident which the driver realized what was happening and managed to back down. Pearson Bridge far enough to prevent becoming stuck, which was very dangerous given the blind curve. These are just the cases I'm aware of. It's possible there are more. I've attached a picture taken by my husband on March 9th when a truck was stuck at this intersection and blocking both lanes for over an hour and a half during morning commute hours. Asheville police were on scene to help divert traffic utilizing city resources. The site of the road is crumbling away and muddy from repeated instances of truck being stuck here. And the culvert is damaged and torn as well. As the road is further damaged by these occurrences, it makes it all the more likely to happen in the future. Even if they are continuing up the road instead of making the sharp turn, each time this happens, commuters from this neighborhood are impacted. City resources are used and roads maintained by the city are damaged. Emergency vehicles are frequently dispatched to the nursing and long-term care facilities in the neighborhood, and blocking this road poses a danger of delays in emergency response times. This same scenario is repeated frequently at the intersection at the top of Payson Bridge as well. The roads of this neighborhood are simply not designed to be accessed by large trucks, and the situation will become even more common, which seems impossible given that it has occurred 5 times so far this month, as construction equipment and materials are trucked into the site through the neighborhood. Construction of the proposed bridge must be a condition of this project going forward to protect the residents of Richmond Hill and the taxpayers of Asheville. The project should not begin until all approvals and permits for the bridge are obtained, and ideally would not begin before the bridge is constructed. Once the bridge is built, an agreement is needed to ensure that access to the bluffs to the Richmond Hill neighborhood will be closed except for emergency situations. I have many other concerns about this development and its impact on our environment and neighborhood, and oppose it completely. If it must happen, however, I strongly encourage you to protect the residents of this neighborhood and the taxpayers of Asheville, who will enjoy no financial benefits of this project from excessive traffic, road obstructions, and expensive repairs.
Okay, we've used up our allotted time, so.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to good news, Eric, gonna talk about the allocation of American Rescue Plan funds, and I did have an opportunity this week to see us grin from ear to ear from Eric, so.
The details are still being rolled out. What we do know today is this was signed into law last Thursday, and it's a $1.9 trillion appropriation nationwide, and we're all aware of that. Provides direct and indirect assistance from the federal government, from the taxpayers, to be used in a variety of different ways. And the funds may be used through 2024. The funds in particular, the ones that we'll talk about, may be used through 2024. Direct distributions to US cities and towns total $65.1 billion of the $1.9 trillion. And then in North Carolina alone, $1.3 billion will be distributed to cities and towns. And then Woodfin's share is $1.9 million, which is not quite half of our annual budget, for context. This is basically what's provided to us. These are preliminary allocations. There's some refining of the cost model that are being done right now. There's some overlap in some states between jurisdictions, townships, and villages and such. And so there'll be a reshuffling of the deck. But right now, this is what it looks like each of the Buncombe County municipalities will receive, will be allocated. And then the county receives an allocation also of about $50 million. So I think what this does is it tells us we're going to take the long approach to this, and how we might want to, as a town, use the funds that will be provided. Again, the eligibility guidelines are still being rolled out. And so we have meetings beginning later this week to understand what are the eligible expenses that may be paid from these funds, so how they may be used. So we don't know enough yet to really have any type of recommendations. Very, very early in that. And so then we'll begin as a town and as an organization then to determine how best to use those funds over the next several years. The first half of the disbursement will be available beginning for Woodfin June 15th. For the larger cities, it's actually 1 month sooner. So we get our allocation available to us June 15th. And then the second half of that disbursement will be available a year later, so in 2022. So at $1 million this year and about $1 million next year. So that's the good news.
Yeah.
So lots of positive feedback around that so far, and a lot of optimism around how that might be used to help us move past COVID.
Any questions for Eric?
That's exciting. Yeah.
Any guidelines on how it can be spent?
Very general. So it is really intended to be for relief from COVID, from the effects of COVID. So some of the eligible categories would be public assistance, economic relief for those who have lost income during this time, whether that be owners, landlords, individuals, through wages, and to supplement other sources. So as we know, there's a direct allocation to every individual that's eligible of $1,400. So part of the decision-making process that I think many of us will face is, so now we've seen the first round of that. How effective has that been at providing some relief? What's left? And so again, that's why we would advocate taking a longer view on this. There's also another round of the PPP funding that's available to businesses and small businesses in particular, I think will be maybe front of the line this time around. And so we'll see what's left from that. It can be used for infrastructure investment, water, sewer, our couple of the categories, broadband, internet is another. It's a variety. There are several of them. It could be used for revenue replacement for local governments too. So if we were to have lost a lot of revenue, then that would be an eligible use of those funds. Again, broad categories. The details still to come.
Good.
Yep, very good. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to old business. First item, presentation of an official zoning map. Adrian, we'll turn it over to you.
So a couple months ago, I told you guys we were working with Land of Sky Regional Council on developing a zoning map. We had a draft version of a map, but we didn't have an official map. So we have finished that project. And so here's the official zoning map. We now have, this is not changing any zoning designations. It's just confirming what we already had. And we will be continuing to work with Land of Sky to keep this updated when we do have zoning changes. We already have a couple that are different, so we'll make sure that takes place. We're also still working with Land of Sky and Buncombe County to get this information on the GIS for, to be put online for public consumption, but that hadn't happened yet. So what I need tonight is the adoption of this map as the official zoning map.
And can we eventually get a copy that's in color?
Yeah,
Okay,
Sure
just so
can.
we could.
Yeah, I might want to.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was just me. Okay. So,
sorry about that.
that's all right.
Any questions for Adrian regarding that map?
Great.
A lot of work went into that. Michael and Adrian put a lot of work and time into that. And incidentally, only the city of Asheville, I believe, in Suffolk County has their zoning districts on the county GIS. That's accurate, I believe. So like that will have it on their own website, you can access that, but not via other counties. So that's a big deal. The county's been interested and very eager to get this data so that they can also, people can help answer their own questions. We get a lot of calls from realtors, prospective buyers want to know what zoning district or property is in. And now that information will be readily available through the county GIS. And that's a pretty big deal.
Okay, so you've heard the presentation. Have a motion to adopt this map.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to new business, monthly report from the ABC board. Mr. Fradlin, we'll turn it over to you.
This is not my screw. Despite of what people say, I don't have a screw loose. Mayor, commissioners. Had another good month. February sales were up 31%. State ABC board sales were up 9%. Asheville was up 1%. So that's the good news. The bad news is the comparisons are going to get a whole lot more difficult because we're going to compare this March, was the first month of COVID. And there was really a run on the store. Everybody thought it was going to close. And they were stocking their shelves, like the toilet paper and everything else, but having more fun. On March the 4th, we received bids for our construction project. We got 3 bids. We elected a winner, D. Michael Ward Construction Company. The amount was $334,000. This is more than what we had expected it to be, but it's still manageable. And what I would like very much for your approval to move money from our working capital account into a construction account. We had $200,000 plus interest that came from the sale of the store to Russ Roberson, and we've had that in as part of the working capital all along. Thanks to COVID, we can comfortably move another $134,000 along with that to a construction account, and we'll still be between the regulations as far as the state is concerned on our minimum working capital and our maximum. We will be still about the halfway point. I've checked with our auditor, I've checked with Joni Morris, our financial officer, and everybody agrees that it's doable, and the board has approved this, but I respectfully ask for your approval to go ahead and move this money.
I don't know if legally, Mr. Joe, if this board has to approve a capital expenditure for the ABC. With this.
So we have this, so we have a statutory citation that says that with. I'll stand with you.
Sure.
The statute reads, and it's 18B-805, section, or in D, that the ABC board may set aside a portion of its remaining gross receipts with limits set by the rules of North Carolina Alcoholic Beverage Control, which is what Tom was speaking to, where there's a formula as to how much working capital may be set aside, as you well know, to operate the system. With the approval of the appointing authority for the board, which is you all, that's it, that's the caveat. The local ABC board may also set aside a portion of the remaining gross receipts as a fund for specific capital improvements.
It is something that we reviewed earlier this week, and that's what the statutes say. So, and this is for construction.
Two things. What does that leave if we move the $134,000 out of operating capital, 200 out of sales of business? How much operating cash does that leave you with?
Well, we've got, I did it two ways. First of all, looking back at February 2020, we had a checking and savings account balance, which included the 200,000 of 429,581. As of this February 28th, we had 647,290.
Count what's carrying an inventory either.
No, that's strictly, that figure is strictly checking and savings.
That's free flow money. So you would still have $300,000 in capital. And there's a round number.
That don't include the cash on hand, does it, Don?
Yeah, that's all of it.
That's all of it.
Yeah, at least $300,000, which is a huge amount of money. So good to go. Let me bring it up. Okay. We leased, I'll bring it up. We leased this building from board members. We sold it to board members. Relevant. We did. We went, son-in-law. When we did this deal, and does she need to abstain from voting, Mr. Bill?
It's
Russ Roberson's her son-in-law.
who's son-in-law? Oh, Jackie's, okay. No, she doesn't have a financial interest in this. So she can, plus, this is not one of those issues where that would be, that would come into play.
I just want to be crystal clear.
Understood.
Just,
No, I have
Covered.
no financial interest in it, guaranteed.
Right.
I'll make a motion that we approve the ABC funds, 200 from the reserve and 134,000 from the other account with all the other stores for a total of 334,000. Remodel, refurbish the store, and also allow like a 10% override in case it goes over in construction without consent of the board.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, have at it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Clearly on you from the-
May I be excused before you change your mind?
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
He and I talked about it.
Okay, and item number 3 was removed from the agenda. Number 4, Parks and Greenway Advisory Committee. Eric?
This is also another happy occasion, I think, to have reached a milestone that some of you have been after us to get underway. So at the last meeting, you all approved standing up at the Parks and Greenways Advisory Committee for the town. So that was passed by the board then. The purpose of that committee is to provide oversight for the Woodfin Greenway and Blueway project, to be advocates for that project, to help us and assist us through public engagement around the project as it proceeds, and of course it's underway, to help and its support with budget recommendations as a sounding board, as advisory, and also to help us with messaging and branding, strategic planning, master plan updates for park system elements over time. I believe it was in the form of a resolution that you all passed, provides that the seats from the committee are filled by appointment from this board, 7 regular members and 2 alternates. The majority of the membership should either live or work in Woodfin, was a stipulation, and staggered 3-year terms is what's envisioned here. So folks rolling on and off every year. Looking for a broad representation of backgrounds, professional experience, personal interest, folks from different walks of life, and different folks who will be using the parks differently than others. And so just a broad cross-section there. Since that time, we solicited applications. We received 12 or 13 to date. The mayor and I met with 10 of those over the last week. And what I'd expected to come back to you was with a recommendation to fill 4 of those seats, so the majority of that board, so we could call a meeting. However, I will tell you that the quality of these folks and the enthusiasm from those who had submitted their applications and their interest in this was a little staggering. And it was really very exciting, especially because I really want to rely on these folks as advisors as we proceed through the projects in particular. And so what we have tonight is, instead of 4, we'd like for you all to consider 6 appointments. And those 6 being Walt Brewer, Chris Bubenick, Lucy Crown, Coral Darby, Gerald Green, and Brian Messing. And the mayor and I can fill in any of the blanks that you may have or any of the questions you may have. These are folks that really have some broad experience. We have those that have parks and recreation programming experience, like professional experience working for Buncombe County, as one of these folks does. Also with Greenways, construction and project management, a woman that works for the city. Project management in general with capital projects is in this mix. We have folks that have looked at how we might view these parks and these assets environmentally. And so those are sound decisions made sensitive to the environment. And this just in general planning and familiarity with the town, where we've come from, our identity. So we felt that this is a broad cross-section of folks because of their backgrounds and what they bring, specifically skills and interests and abilities to this committee. So this is our recommendation, and we will, once you all vote on that and decide, we do intend to come back. We have 3 more people we need to talk with. We didn't get to in the first round, so I guess we had 13 in total. So we'll be talking with those in the next week or so, bring back a recommendation for 1 regular seat to be filled, and then 2 alternates next month will be the plan.
Questions for Eric?
I was just thinking it might be nice to see if Jason Young's wife might like to serve as an alternate to kind of perpetuate
Understood.
his, so I thought maybe you might give her a call and just see. Don't you all think that would be?
We have heard from the young family. We have heard from the young family. Please. We've heard from the young family, so
Very good. So
they're fully informed and engaged in this, and
Yes.
so that's encouraging.
Okay. Those look really good. I recognize several names of people that have been very helpful in different capacities, and so I think those are good.
Any other questions, comments? Okay,
So we need to vote.
Motion.
yeah, need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Greenway, Blueway Advisory Committees, Park to Greenway Advisory Committee. The 6 listed and consider the other 3 alternates or a regular member in April.
Each have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay. While you're up there,
While I'm here, let's just move on.
next item, consideration of appointment of a finance officer.
We skipped over one. There's one just before that, Mayor, if you don't mind my interrupting. So this is actually also in the resolution that you all adopted last year. The plan for the advisory committee was to stand up a project steering committee for the Greenway and Blueway. And so this is comprised by that resolution of the chair, which will be appointed from the membership of the advisory committee, the chair, town administrator, myself, and one of you. And so then what we would like tonight is to hear from you who that person may be, and you all have discussion on that and appoint a member if you're ready to do so from among yourselves.
Anybody like to volunteer?
On there, Debbie, she's been really involved from the beginning.
And I would love to serve. That would be wonderful.
Okay, you heard that. Somebody want to put that in form of a motion?
I'll make a motion that we appoint Vice Mayor Ethan Tanner to the Woodland Greenway Blueway Steering Committee.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's exciting.
It is exciting. And then the final item on the regular agenda, if I'm not mistaken, is the appointment of a finance officer. So there is a designation into this role is required by law. And as opposed to some of the other roles and hats that we wear here at Town Hall. And there are specific duties that are outlined in the statutes. Some of them are listed here to keep the accounts, to disperse all funds, to receive and deposit all funds, and to make reports to you all. And you all appointed me into that role as the administrator in July or August, I think it was in July. And so now with the addition of a finance director to our staff, that logically, that responsibility and that designation should reside with that position. And so what we're requesting is that that designation is attached to that position, to our current finance director, any successors to that, though she's never going to leave. But
Good to know.
but that will stay with the, I'll look her in the eye. And so that's the request before you.
Okay, you heard Eric's report and request. We have a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second. Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
and while you're up there,
I think I'm going to hand off, actually. The next one up would be the chief. Mr. Spradling's already given his report. We moved him to the front of the agenda.
yeah, we'll have the police report first.
And then I'll be back.
Good afternoon, good evening, whatever we want to call it here. I'm still run by daylight saving time here, so I might be an hour behind, hour ahead, I'm not sure yet. You have your totals in front of you. As you can see, our activities are starting to pick up compared to this time from last year. And we owe a lot of that actually to coming back towards full staff. Now that we have officers who are trained out on the roadway, we still have a few that we're getting there. I'll address that in a minute, but now that we have some officers who have been through some training necessary for them to get out there and do a lot of the enforcement actions that we're looking at or looking for, our numbers starting to go up. You see our citations issues have gone up, felony drug arrests. I'm sorry, citations and felony drugs went down. But at the same time, they're out there actually doing more. That's the 644 activities opposed to 603 from last year. We also see, unfortunately, that our crash reports are going up, and that's due to increased traffic with the return to learn, which I think was last Monday. Woodfin Elementary resumed their regular schedule. There are more vehicles on the roadway. I experienced that on my way in the mornings now too. I hit that traffic jam at New Stock every morning. So we know that when we have more vehicles, we'll have more crashes, and we anticipate that number, unfortunately, to increase as we roll through the last couple months of school towards summer. Real quick, our investigations reports for February. Did have a death investigation with an overdose, which is inactive and pending, waiting a report from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner for that. Natural death investigation, another overdose investigation, and then an elder abuse investigation, which was closed, unfounded. No report there. I do want to draw your attention to what we call a critical incident, which occurred last week, which was a shooting incident on Pelzer Street. That is our first reported shooting incident for this year, as opposed to Asheville's 104. So I'm feeling pretty confident about that. Of course, we never like to have that type of incident here in Woodfin. So we've increased patrols in the area, and hopefully, from what I can gather, this is an incident that involves people who were involved in a different incident in Asheville, and a different shooting incident in Asheville. So we can see how some of those things run across the city lines. Unfortunately, they don't stop when they see that entering Woodfin sign and say, hey, I need to turn around and go back. Some of them still do continue into Woodfin, and that's kind of where this stemmed from. On a related or kind of a side note, I was talking about our officers who were coming on board and getting trained. I want to thank the mayor again for coming up today to swear in our latest officer, our second latest. We have another one who we're waiting paperwork back on. But Ms. Jamie McCandless was sworn in today. She'll begin her field training on Friday. Sergeant Joshua Greer started with us yesterday. We are awaiting his paperwork to get back from CJ Standards or from Raleigh. That's usually about a 2-week turnaround once we submit it. And we have to get him qualified tomorrow before we can send that paperwork off. So we're hoping in the next couple of weeks to get him into training and out on the road, which will at that point leave us with only one vacancy. And we have been receiving some resumes and applications for that. We hope to get it filled soon. On that same note, we've had another personnel change where we've appointed a new investigator, Officer Jason Gregg, who's been with us for about 3 years, was appointed investigator as of yesterday. But he will remain in a patrol capacity for a little while to help train our new officers. And then once he finishes up with that, we'll kind of do a hybrid and then go into investigations full time. The last thing I talked to Commissioner Lunford about this, is we anticipate receiving our new vehicles sometime this week. Received a call from Enterprise. They gave me the heads up that our upfitting shop was running behind. They'd hoped to get those vehicles to us at the end of last month. Now it's looking like either the end of this week or beginning of next week, we should anticipate to have those. And that's what I have. Any questions? All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
So I told you guys I would report to you on what the Planning and Zoning Board of Adjustment had been meeting on. So at the March 1st meeting, they had the conditional use permit hearing for the Bluffs on River Bend, which you're well aware of. That hearing was continued until April 5th. So that will be what's on the agenda for April 5th. That's the only thing on the agenda for that month. They also rezoned 3 properties on Riverside Drive from heavy industrial to community shopping. They're the properties in between Ghost Storage and Zillicoa, including the UNCA property. And they issued a variance for 30 View Street for a setback reduction, side yard setback reduction. I also wanted to let you know that I'll be having my first training session on Friday, this Friday at 11 o'clock via Zoom. We have access to some modules from the School of Government through our participation with the risk management program with the League of Municipalities that are free. So I'm going to start with those, hopefully do a session once a month with a different module that they're offering. So this first one's going to be an introduction to planning and zoning and Board of Adjustment and all those fun things. So it'll be about an hour. It'll be at 11 o'clock on Friday and it'll be on Zoom. So it'll be recorded. If people can't make it, we'll make it available for them after the fact. That's all I have. If you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Public Works, Administration, and Greenway and Blueway, Eric.
Yes, and so Public Works, you have the reports in your packets there. Not a great deal to report, other than to say, when we come back to talk about sanitation, stormwater, and streets in a couple of weeks with our budget workshop, Johnny will be with us too, so we'll hear the expert speak. Administration, so several updates wanted to provide to you. We do have a vacant position, our town clerk, which we've also modified to include an HR analyst role in that. That position is vacant, has been for a bit, and we have received about half a dozen applications, and we'll be interviewing folks beginning tomorrow and hope to have a decision soon and a recommendation for you all to appoint a town clerk next time we meet. So we will look to our budget workshop and have that one business item on that when we meet in a couple of weeks. Budget reports. So again, as the outgoing finance officer and before the new finance officer takes the podium, this is how you all approve the budget on the expenditure side, reading down the left-hand column. In prior months, I've brought to you the amended budget, what we spent year to date, and then the percent of the budget that was spent. This time I've added a couple of columns as well. So last week we met and we talked about the 5-year forecast. It was based on a projection of where we might end this year. And so this is the preliminary, this is the projection right now based on what we knew a week ago, if you will. And want to draw your attention to a couple of items in particular. So the one that's circled there is the tax collection fee. And that we had an invoice from Buncombe County since the last time that we met. And what is captured in this particular category is the 2% that we pay for the collection of all property taxes. That's standard. All municipalities pay that to the county. And then the other is the debt service on the Reynolds Mountain project. So that it was a TIF, if you remember that particular term. So it was a particular financing vehicle. And as we talked last week, those payments are stepping up. And so that has exceeded what the budget was at the time. And I think that was just a carryover from the prior years, why that difference is there. So that's what you see in that line. And then police is the only one other than that other than the tax collection fee that is going to be close to what we budgeted. So we just be keeping an eye on that. Chief is very diligent, and we talk frequently, and he and the finance director will be doing that too. And so I'm not concerned about that so much. But by the end of the year, just based on forecast, we might come close to hitting that budget number. Any questions on expenditures? You have the line item detail in your packets there.
One thing I'd like to see is as we progress along, how far in the year we actually are.
I see. Yes, sir. So for example, I think what you're saying is, so this would be 8 months. So it'd be 2/3, 66, or yeah, 66%.
Yes.
You know, public math is difficult for some of us. 67% of the year, so you might expect 67%.
Just a quick glance, we can say, okay, we're exiting the year and we spent X.
Very good. Yes, sir. And so to your point, bottom line there, year to date, we spent about 60% of our budget overall, general fund. And then looking more, well, this is cash flow, but I've also added in projection here as well. So the first two columns, First is the amended budget for the year, the balanced budget. The next is what we've actually received. So cash basis on the revenue side and the expenditure side too, what we've actually paid out. And you see we have a surplus there, cash year to date. Looking at the year as a whole, it's based on the projection. So we looked at the expenditures on the previous slide, which were about just south of $4.5 million projected. We're projecting revenue conservatively to come in at 4.9 nearly. So it gives us a surplus of about $400,000 based on projections. The closer we get to the end of the year, the more precise this will be. And by the time we get to June 30th, we'll be very accurate because we'll have all we're going to have. We'll spend all we're going to spend. And specifically, so looking at some key revenues, we've talked and we'll talk a little bit more about sales tax, and we talk about that every month because that's been a kind of a shining star this year. Property taxes, just want to give you a flavor for that too. So though we will exceed budget on sales tax, we will fall short most likely on our property taxes this year. So one will offset the other.
Why is that?
Well, there's a kind of a budgeting anomaly that was carried forward from a previous year in part, where we counted the revenue that was associated with the repayment of the Greenway and Blueway debt
Okay,
in the form of property taxes in two places.
okay, so it really was just that. It wasn't really it. Okay.
That's right. So based on just the number that was estimated for taking that out of consideration, it's very close.
Okay.
It's about $100,000 difference. And then looking at sales tax, what we've done up to this point is looked only at the actuals that were received and compared that to the budget. And so looking at the chart, the graph, the horizontal orange line is the current year's budget. The red line, the solid red line is what we've received every month year to date. And so you see we've already exceeded our budget for the year. The blue line is last year and the green line is 2 years ago. You can see every year sales and use tax creeps up. This year it jumps up. And so projecting out through the end of the year, we've been running in recent months 30%, just like with the ABC store, we've been running 30 to almost 40% ahead from one comparing January to January of last year. It was like 30-some% ahead. But I've taken and said, we have 20% ahead of each of the months in the remaining period of this fiscal year. And if using that, following that, and if that assumption holds true, then we will end up with sales tax about $1.2 million, which is, I mean, that's nearly double what the budget was, more than double what the budget was, if my math is right. So anyway, just continue good news there too. So that does demonstrate a robust, at least spending by consumers and business folk.
I think that tells us a lot about what stimulus money gets spent on.
And I think,
Gets spent.
and to your point, we may see another big jump in that in the next month or two. You have a great point. And there's a lag of 2 months between the actual paying of the tax sales and it coming back. So we'll see that, the impacts. Contracts, entered into 3 contracts since the last time that we met. One is a master agreement with Anchor QEA, which is an engineering firm here in town. They specialize, well, where we've talked with them the most so far has been in the area of stormwater, but they also do park design and those types of engineering, that type of engineering work. So we've entered into a master agreement with them, which will allow us then to go back with specific task orders as over time if we need to engage them. So I know Adrian has talked with some of their folks also, and we feel very positive about what capabilities they may bring to the town in time. As Adrian also referenced with the GIS, with the map, the zoning map, we have signed a contract with Land of Sky to manage that data for us. And that cost, I have 2 parentheses on the first bullet, is would not to exceed in this fiscal year $2,800. And then finally, the School of Government. This is something also that Adrian gave us an update last month about the 160D. So that law, that legislation, which requires us to revise some of our ordinances, our zoning ordinance and our subdivision ordinance. And so that's what this is, a review of those drafts. The School of Government offers that service. And that's a very low cost. We also got some estimates from some local attorneys, and it was far in excess of that. And they're doing this over and over. So they have a lot of, they play in the sandbox quite a bit. And they are the guidance that we all look to anyway in North Carolina government. And so that was a good find. And I was glad that Adrian was able to make contact with them and bring that back to us. We met last week and talked about and went through a five-year financial forecast. You all provide a lot of important feedback so that as we prepare and move toward a recommended budget that'll come back to you in May, that discussion on last Tuesday will help inform that a great deal and help redirect us on some things. Very, very important and very helpful. We're looking forward in 2 weeks to come back and talking about street sanitation and stormwater. We introduced some of those topics last week, and then we'll spend more time on that in a couple of weeks. And so I'm curious, and it may not be something that you know right now, you may not have your calendars, but I think the intent initially was to do more of a midday meeting. We did a later afternoon meeting last time, which worked for everybody. So I don't know if that schedule worked well. Would like some feedback from you. Not tonight. I can reach out and poll you all later individually. If there are particular conflicts, that would be helpful for that Tuesday, 2 weeks from now. Be helpful to know. We'll move on to Greenway and Blueway. Talk through some developments there. Well, the first bullet is the naming rights policy, which had been on the agenda tonight. That's been tabled, so we won't discuss that. There's nothing to discuss there at this point. The advisory committee, now you all have appointed the first 6 members there, so that's a milestone for us, and we'll have our inaugural meeting coming up in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The county, and so Peyton O'Connor and I met with the new executive director at the TDA a couple of weeks ago just to familiarize her with the Woodfin, Greenway, and Blueway, what it means, how it relates to some of the other projects that are going on in the county, and had a very engaging discussion with her. And she was very eager to hear what was going on here in Woodfin, where she wanted to understand where the town is headed. And so that was also good insight into what makes her tick and her thinking and where she may be headed with this TDA board. And I know she's a director and they have an unappointed board, but that relationship there's, anyway, not get into that. It was a good and productive conversation. Silverline Park, we have a second change order. I think we touched on this last time. So it was just over $9,000 due to some changes. State level, that cost additional work needed to be done on that conditional, I always struggle, LO, conditional, and the last is map revision. So anyway, more work to get a permit to complete the work on the park near to the riverbank. I will master that one day. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong slide. That's too funny. There we go. So talking with the contractor again, last construction meeting, still on schedule to open the first phase of Riverside Park by the end of the summer, we'll say. We've had some weather delays recently and it's a wet site, so that's been a bit of a challenge. What's coming up next and in the near future, we'll be talking more about the use of the building on the park. We have a tenant there now, and so that's no change there. And the next meeting, I didn't update that, will be end of this month. For Riverside Park and the Wave, we probably had the most work done here recently. And so we're still finalizing the contract for design for both the Wave and Riverside Park, but very close, sort of in the short rows of that to get that contract signed and executed. The Water Resources Development Grant.
That's the one Linda's working on.
Did work on, and so met with us in December. We applied. The application was submitted before the end of December.
Okay.
It's a $200,000 ask, and a decision should be received back in May.
In May. Okay.
Yep. And then the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant, the PARTF grant, is the other one now that we're working on, the next one up. And to that end, Linda, our contractor helping us with grants, invited a representative from the Recreation Resources group, which helps inform the decision-making for the PARTF grants. She came and met with us on site down at Riverside Park, and we had River Lincoln, town staff, and the mayor were there. Had a great discussion with her. She gave us some important guidelines and maybe some cautions and some just some advice on how to submit an application, how to draft it and submit an application that might help us score points and achieve an award. One of the things was to have the components of the Woodfin, Greenway, and Blueway in a formal capital improvements plan. And so we took a look at that last week too. So when that is finalized, then those elements will be in that with all other town expenditures of capital nature. And the application is being drafted now, and it will be due May 1st. And so next month we'll be back and Linda will join us, and then we'll just seek your approval to apply for that grant. Greenways, no change.
Go back just 1 second on Silverline Park.
Sir,
I did have a conversation with the realtor about whether they didn't want to manage it or not. They want to be the one leasing agent, lease it out and take care of the turnkey deal, so there's no conflict with this board. He's interested and he's in Texas this week, I think. He gets back, whomever would like to meet with him. For all of us.
that's great.
They would kind of turn that over to his bid, so we're not.
See what he's thinking is that would be good. Yeah.
They fit it up, they fit it up. And, you know, the management fees aren't, from what I gather, aren't that high to manage the whole property and take care of it. Keep it out of where, well, so.
Perfect. And so Sherry and I will be working on that staff side. So we'll be both involved in that particular endeavor. That's great. Thank you.
Takes a move to the other.
It does.
On the deal with it. It's
Great.
Let somebody do it. And even if it's not him, it's somebody else, he can do a proposal for this.
Right.
Get a bill for what it's worth.
Absolutely.
Yep. And then, and Adrian as well, too, because we got to consider the floodplain impacts on that too. So the three of us will be working on that. Great. Yes, so then the budget, minor modifications here, put in the change orders, or the last change order. So not much change from last time we took a look at it. So always a moving target on this, as budgets are. All right. That's all I have for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
We need to have a short closed session. Have you got anything you want to talk about too?
We do have a personal matter
Okay.
as well as the legal matter that you're going to talk about.
Okay, does anybody have anything else to come before the board at this point? Not that I hear a motion that we close this session and go into closed session.
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay. We're adjourned from our regular meeting.
So.